a lot about the dads out there wouldn't classify themselves as a visionary. But I think it's something I would encourage you to try to press into and ask yourself questions that push you into that way of thinking.
Yeah.
So maybe you're a detail person and things up close and next year are where you're at. But allow the Lord in a time of prayer or something to really start to prime that pump in you where you're thinking like, when my kids graduate from high school, where do I want to be at with them relationally? Or like when my wife and I have our 25th anniversary, where could we be at relationally? Or what do we hope to have accomplished by then? Where will we be with our kids or our business or my job, like wherever your circumstances are? I know sometimes God can take those things exponentially way beyond where our imagination took us. That's way better than aiming at nothing.
Mm.
I'm not necessarily gifted visionary wise. And so I can relate to the men that I'm thinking about being in the leadership position of the man and the husband and just thinking like how intimidating it could be to being asked, like, find a vision, make it out. So I just want to say, like, ask the Lord, intentionally ask Him for ideas or ways to think about this idea of having a vision for your family, what that could look like, and then be able to back it up to today and how you can work towards playing that vision out.
Yeah, it's something you have to practice, and I think a lot of times maybe the fuzziness gets certain people who are more perfectionists or detail oriented, like you said, it kind of locks them up. It causes them not to be okay with just sort of painting a fuzzy picture. That's why I just like the exercise of throw a date out there and then just what do you see? Like, and it's okay. Make it sound really general, and it doesn't need to be high resolution. But the more you can do this exercise, the more you'll begin to aim at that thing. Stephen Covey famously talks about how everything is created twice. Like if you think about a house that's being built, we're looking out our window right now and this big addition is being put on our neighbor's house. It's like it was envisioned twice. It was envisioned first in the minds of an architect, right? And now it's being built in physical concrete and wood and steel. Same is true for your household, your family. It has to start by being built in your own mind and then built in the lives of your children and your grandchildren and in the future descendants. But the problem is that, how many of us would build a house without architectural plans, right? And so you want to take some time to try to figure out how to do that. Prompts like the five capitals, like 10 years from now, what does our family look like or feel like relationally? What does it feel like spiritually? Like what's happening? What are some of the things we're celebrating? What does it feel like physically? Like what are we eating? And how's our health, in those seasons? How do we take care of each other physically? How are we doing financially? Each of these different capitals intellectually, they help us just create buckets or categories for vision. You might look at a page like that and think, well, man, I don't know if any of this is going to actually happen. And I think that you need to understand that if you start to write these visionary documents, you start to take time to try to see the future, you will end up in a different place. Now, it might not look exactly like that. And again, I think it's important, even if you do start to describe a vision in high resolution, it's probably not going to happen like the way you're describing it. It's going those are always approximations, but they are more like a compass point that starts to point your family in a direction where you start to move that. And that's why I kind of want to give those examples. I remember 25 years ago when I started to really, for the first time, have a vision for like wanting to work alongside my adult children, just wanting that to be an option. Like if I work in a regular full-time job for a church or for a company, am I going to actually get to live an integrated life with my kids in any way? And I was really concerned about that. Like I want that to be options. Like those are things that I think it's not happening exactly the way I thought of it. It's not like we're all working in exactly the same business. There are even times where I started a business. I'm like, this is the business our family is actually going to work in. And then we ended up losing a business or selling a business. None of it has happened the way that I saw it, but all of it is happening in sort of that fuzzy way, the way that I saw it. Right. And I think that a lot of times you have to just get really comfortable with the future being, you know, not really clear, but you still need it to be directional. So yeah, anything that you thought about, like from our family story, like things that you've seen or that we've seen, we've tried to envision, how is visionary, like thinking helped us kind of move in a common direction.
So I feel like when you think about the future, you the world has us come up with a 5-year plan. Like, where do you want to be financially? How many assets do you want to have? And those aren't bad things, but I think that a lot of times we're missing out on understanding how we're going to be maturing and growing in the things that are hard to articulate. Like, you don't have anything to show on paper, but it's like, wow, you've grown so much in your faith and your trust in the Lord. Or maybe you've learned how to believe more in his timing. Maybe you learn more about how to fall back on his provision. Maybe you've learned more how to hear his voice when you're really praying about a decision, like how to make decisions faster and more with more success on the other side of the decision. All of those things are skills that you learn if you're open to growing and maturing in your faith with the Lord, then that journey that you're on can lead you to these other things. So, like you're saying, like in our state 25 years ago, you were saying like, "Oh, I wanna be able to work with my kids when they're adults." That's like, I don't even know how many kids we're gonna have. Like 25 years ago, we had 1, So you're kind of like, I don't know how many kids we're gonna have, but I know we want more than 1, and I know that at some point in my life, I want to be able to work with them. And that was like a totally new thought and just like mind blowing for us. And like you said, what you might put on paper might not actually be what happens, but the process of like hearing, trusting, and obeying God's voice in making this decision next week or next year, the role of promise and the role of blessing, like understanding what those are, pressing into them, going through hard things like losing a parent or making a decision about a move or a child with a health concern, like all of these things might feel like distractions or something, but they're actually part of the maturing process to on this journey of getting to the place where you are establishing your vision and then you're revisiting and then reestablishing and kind of redirecting and tweaking your vision.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite thing about writing this book is how tethered it is to the scriptures. Like I'm just kind of stumbling across these things. And I think sometimes when we develop like mission, vision, values for families in an abstract way, we miss out on some of these other elements you're describing, the promise and the blessing and the trust and it's no longer this deep interaction with the Lord that you see in a story like Abram and how he becomes Abraham, how this story unfolds. And so I've just been struck like every element of the story and the next place we're going to go, the next section is all about hearing and trusting the voice of God because there's that what happened there and how that interacts with vision, I think is really important. I had an author once that I was friends with, and he used to always love to say, I don't have a vision has me. And by that, he meant
Mm.
God was communicating something, giving me a picture. And there had been a few times in prayer where I will suddenly see something like really symbolic, like picture of something. And it very rarely happens, but man, that it's so helpful to have the Holy Spirit provide these images of what the future could look like so that we don't have visions, the visions have us, and that God is directing us and guiding us.